So recently, I rewatched the episode Cat Blanc from Season 3 of Miraculous Ladybug, and that got me thinking about time travel in the Miraculous Ladybug Universe. When the Rabbit Miraculous first started getting used, I thought the concept was pretty cool, as long as they follow their own established rules, otherwise they'd create plot holes. But they didn't. In fact, they seemingly just write the story with no regard to how time travel would work in their own universe. It's used in different ways, with different effects that all contradict each other. So obviously the first real episode we see the Rabbit Miraculous getting any real use was in Time Tagger, where Blanc from the future has been trapped deep in the past with a damaged Miraculous. In this episode, the show sets up its time travel with something called fixed loop time travel. This means if I wanted to change the past by going back in time, I'd find that I couldn't, because I was always supposed to go back in time to try and change things, which is what actually made that event happen. And we see this in action in the episode, where Alex's family heirloom, which was introduced in Season 1, is actually the Rabbit Miraculous, which has been disguised for generations to get it to an appropriate point in the future to fix things. Blanc was always supposed to go back in time so that her younger self would have the Miraculous ready to give back to her. It's a fixed loop, it can't be changed, and so the events were always supposed to play out like that. But then in the same episode, a bunch of characters are sent into the past, and that rewrites the present. So the rules don't even stay consistent in the same episode, and that throws the fixed loop theory out the window. Does that make sense? I hope so, because it only gets more confusing from here out. Now, before you say it, yes, I know it's just a TV show and I shouldn't overthink it too much. They did it for a cool storyline, but in my opinion, if you throw out the established rules that you set up in your fictional setting, it makes the story much less satisfying to watch play out. Audiences generally don't like it when you insult their intelligence or just blatantly change plot points for the rule of cool. Anyway, back to the storyline. In Cat Blanc, the way time travel works is different branching futures, similar to what's done in Back to the Future, where if you change something in your past, your future will change and butterfly effect its way into something completely different. But the problem is, the writers seem to have forgot that for this kind of storyline to happen, you actually have to change something in the past for this to occur. Let me explain what I mean. In Cat Blanc, it's clear that there's two main time streams. One in which Cat Blanc was created and destroyed Paris, and one in which all the heroes are adults and protect Paris together. The main trigger that makes these timelines diverge is the fact that Marinette was discovered to be Ladybug by Adrien in one timeline, but not in the other. Now, on the surface, this is fine. There's two separate timelines operating. But that's where the plot goes wonky and the writers seemingly forgot how time travel's supposed to work. So at this point we have Timeline A and Timeline B. Timeline A is the main timeline where Ladybug's not discovered and the heroes grow up. And B is Cat Blanc. They're parallel timelines. They both have their own past events which are similar, but not exactly the same. But then the story acts as if Marinette getting discovered as Ladybug is going to erase Blanx's future. But that's not possible, because if that's the case, Blanx would never have been able to come back to the past in Time Tagger because she would already have been erased. If that's the case, then Cat Blanc blowing up Paris would be the true future, but it's made explicitly clear that that's not the true future. And if this is confusing, I understand. It's a perfect example of why you shouldn't just use time travel willy-nilly. It makes everything so convoluted and hard to understand. And what's worse, in something like Back to the Future, at least there's some kind of trigger that starts to erase one timeline and replace it with another. That trigger being the main character going back in time and changing the past, which in turn changes the future. But in Cat Blanc, none of this happens. Marinette doesn't do anything to meddle with time, it just randomly starts to delete Blanx's timeline so the story can happen. Now, if this seems very rambly or like it doesn't make sense or it confuses you, welcome to the club. Time travel is very, very stupid, and it really shouldn't have been used unless you're actually going to completely follow the rules you've set out. Like, in Avengers Endgame, they actually have scenes designed to explain the rules to the audience, and then they don't break them. That's how time travel should be handled. But if you just make it up as you go along based on what seems interesting, it makes the plot a jumbled mess and rips huge plot holes into the story. So based on that, I really hope they stop using it, or at least just stop going to the past, because you can avoid a lot of these problems if you only go to the future. But, as always, that's just my opinion. What do you guys think? Do you like time travel in Miraculous? Do you think it really matters if it doesn't make much sense or if it breaks its own rules? Let me know what you think.